Hey, everybody. Welcome into a new edition of Kevin's Cool Takes. Wow. Got a lot to think about over the last week. So this episode is just going to be a quick hitter on last week's Monday night game. Wanted to start off real quickly on one thing. All right. Holding happens on every play, right? I've heard it. I've had multiple tweets out this week. The biggest defense to allowing a 76-yard touchdown run to exist with three holdings on the play is that holding happens on every play. Well, I agree to an extent, right? So on a 7-yard run, you set the precedent, you toss a flag to let people know I'm going to call holding because when you do a run like Derrick Henry had for 76 yards, I'm going to call it again. That's the precedent you set. Now, do you need to call a marginal holding, one marginal holding on a 3-yard run? No. I mean, you just don't. It's like hockey. Maybe you swallow the whistles at points in the game. It's using your head. You can't allow a play to go 76 yards when you call holding on it, right? When it should have been holding in 3 different points of attack. Now, the biggest difference here is you set the precedent calling it already. You called it around the edge on Emmanuel Sanders. You can't call it on Emmanuel Sanders and not call it in that situation as well earlier in the game on Derrick Henry. Also, on a kick return, that was probably holding on Andre Smith. I don't know. He can make the play. You could have gone either way. If that's the judgment on should you call that or not, that makes it more iffy. Did he even need to do that besides just standing there? I don't think he did. I don't think he's going to at McKenzie's speed. He's going to be able to make the play. So you called it there. You really did show that I'm going to call holding today. You called it twice. One on Andre Smith earlier in the game. In the same kick return. So at some point you're calling that. So if it happens on every play, call it. If that's really, maybe people will stop holding. You were setting a pretty good standard of calling holding. So, you need to call that play. Now I've heard this about, the blocking downfield and the digs. You already took a touchdown. You want to keep taking touchdowns off the board. You had already taken a touchdown off the board on that drive on the end around holding on the Dawson Knox touchdown. You want to just keep doing it? Okay. So that's fine. You can. I need it called on the Titans then. I need it called then. I need it called on the second Derrick Henry touchdown. You can't tackle defensive backs on any level, on any Pop Warner. You can't tackle defensive backs. It happened again. You need to call it there. Is that one, as noteworthy? Because people are probably thinking, well, the Titans were going to score. We had time to the Bills had time to tie it up or go ahead, I should say. So whatever. But really, that's holding. You need to make the Titans score and earn it like the Bills did to the Diggs touchdown. Well, blocking downfield. Well, they are engaged. That's a 50-50 call. That's questionable at best. However, I'll take it. Call it. If you think if that gives me the Derrick Henry 2 holdings on his 2 touchdowns, I'll call it. The Bills did a great job of stopping Derrick Henry. He wasn't I really not upset with the performance against Derrick Henry. I'm upset against the pass rush. It was awful. I know what they did. I know what they went in with the heavy lineups. And even if we sack Tannehill, big deal. It's not it's not what we're after here. We're after stopping Derrick Henry. That's what we're after. I don't like the ability to inactivate 2 second-round picks that have been showing to play better and better each week. I don't think that was there. Now, a lot of people are like, well, they went through the big lineup. Well, they did, but why did they not inactivate Andre Smith, a guy that they thought added to special teams? I'd like to see that move never happen again. I understand the ability to Dodson and Andre Smith can do on special teams. I'm sorry, but you can't have them both. You can't have them both active on game days. It doesn't add enough. The special teams unit's a wreck. Taking off Dodson off the field and putting in, I don't even know who they would put in that spot. They have multiple sets. They have multiple personnel packages on special teams. I don't see the downgrade. I'm not going to see the downgrade there. Okay. Over a Dodson holdings and 2 Andre Smith holdings. Need the defensive end that you paid a 2nd-round pick to play and not the very marginal 1/11th percentage bump on potentially a special teams kick return. A, where, they're going to the end zone, but B, I could tell, they're kicking short. Didn't really work. Their primary kick returner got hurt. Their backup went in and was actually better. We saw that happening a mile away. It's not like he broke 1,000,000 yards, but he, consistently got it past the 30. Can't have it. You can't have it when you're activating special teams linebackers. And that is Kevin's cool take that I'm going to live by. Play your 2nd-round defensive ends that you clearly liked. Play them, get them development reps get that rotation that you had against Kansas City. Much better game plan. You can say, Kevin, of course they won. Defensively, a much better defensive game plan against KC than it was against Tennessee. I saw it, stopping Derrick Henry. But what happens when you don't get the holding call that you should have gotten? What happens? The day's lost. It's lost. Now you don't have defensive ends when you could have used them the most, when they were actually throwing it. The one drive, and they scored in 6 consecutive drives, guys. That's not a good defensive game plan. It's just not. It's just not what they thought. It happened last year too, although really weird COVID situation. We all know about that and how they were practicing at the high school. But it's still, they went in with a game plan. They stopped Derrick Henry at least last year. However, Tannehill was unstoppable. Same thing happened. The game plan doesn't work. I guess you're figuring it worked a little bit early on, but as a second half game, they knew exactly what the game plan was, and it didn't work any longer. You're finding AJ Brown. You're chasing back, trying to get back into your zones after you guessed run. Levi Wallace is getting beat. I've seen some arguments whether it's 2, 3, or 4 times, and it doesn't really matter. Levi Wallace sucks, so it doesn't really matter how many times he was beat. Would have loved to see, especially if you have this theory that when the playoffs come and you're going to try to run this run stop defense. All right, well, don't draft the defensive ends then. 2 back-to-back, 3 of them, and your first, your second, and your second. No, I don't like that method. Give me a cornerback too that is better than Levi Wallace is. That's what I would have liked to see, because he's going to play every snap. So that's what I really would have. If you're going to have game plans in big games, Tennessee Titans game, maybe later on in the season, if you see the Ravens, in the Browns game, if you see them in the playoffs, things like that. If you're going to go to that, besides Kansas City, if you're going to go to that game plan, I'd rather have you not taken multiple defensive ends. If you're going to run F.A. Obata and Mario Addison and everybody else, get me a cornerback. Get me a cornerback at the deadline then. If that's the game plan that you want to run, get me a cornerback to upgrade a spot of someone that's going to play on every play. So those are the updates I'd like to see. Now, if you go into, let's talk about Titans fans for a second. Wow, do they find tweets after the fact? They disappear. Now, guys, I got a comment for you. They will find you. They'll find you. They're scum. When you tweet something, just tweet back to them what happened in the Jets game, because they'll make excuses about AJ Brown and Julio Jones. And it's hilarious because they're like, oh, holding, you guys are, you're going to cry about holding. Yeah, I am, because that's a penalty that needs to be called. And they should get a letter to the Buffalo front office saying, we missed that badly. That's holding. That's clearly the only reason there's 7 points on the board were 3 holdings on one play, which one of your best players in Jordan Poyer's tackle. Trey White's held down the field. Taron Johnson, another just paid to be the best slot corner in the league, was essentially unable. All 3 of them in the running lanes that Derrick Henry found were unable to make a play. It's holding. It is just the reason the penalty exists. If you don't want holding to exist, you have your CBA discussions and get rid of holding. I mean, whatever. But that, in this case where holding exists, that's a holding call, and you need to call it on one of 3. You can't say, well, he missed it on Jordan Poyer. All right, I listened to that. You can't miss it down the field on either Taron Johnson or on Trey White. It's just, I don't know how you could possibly miss it. You wanted that play to exist. You let it go. At least admit it. You wanted, maybe early on in the game, you're like, let's keep this game close. Let's not have this Buffalo, Kansas City. We'll swallow it there. But then when the Bills are in the red zone, we're going to call it there. We're going to call it an Isaiah McKenzie touchdown run. We want to see Josh Allen drive down the field. Those thoughts are always in my head. Hey, that's weird. I think it was just a little bit too obvious by Clete Blakeman and crew. I tweeted hilariously that he calls a lot of holdings and forgets one of the biggest, probably the biggest one, of the Bills season. That's a holding call. You got to make that call. Now, the Bills are okay. They have such a soft schedule. You would have liked to see them get through Tennessee to prove hey, they can beat all the AFC contenders, especially after basically dropping a similar game to the Steelers. The Bills' offense looked way better than the Steelers, but their defense didn't. So it's kind of the opposite game. The Steelers game, your defense looked good. Pump block, some weird situations. Josh Allen wasn't in rhythm yet. It is what it is. Then the Titans game is kind of the opposite, where the offense was good. They struggled in the red zone. You're going to sit here and blame the offense when they score 31 points and you need to win almost every one of those. And then you're going to blame the offense for not converting more red zone points because your defense couldn't stop Ryan Tannehill. That's a number 1 defense. That's insane to me. I'm sorry. Yes, there were some struggles in the red zone. The numbers are even lower because of the 4th down stop, which is the right call. At the time, I said it was the right call. And then you second guess yourself when you're stopped. Everyone does. I mean, it's human nature. You second guess yourself once that play is stopped. You're like, oh, maybe I was wrong. That's not that right. That's not the right play call. What are you talking about? Kick it in, have a chance to your defense wasn't doing anything in that specific game, in that specific half. It wasn't doing anything. The game plan they had just, it was countered, so before you can't go back to the drawing board and play overtime in a week. You need to play it 5 minutes from then. So the problem there is they're like, yeah, my offense has been pretty good. Josh Allen converts this almost every single time. I'm going to put it into his hands. And I trust one of the best players in the NFL over a coin flip / not getting a holding call. So my counter to anyone saying, well, you got to trust the number one defense to make a stop. Well, how can you when you're not getting a holding call? So go and win the game. They guessed the right gap. They guessed the right play call. Simmons says he knew the play was coming. Good for you. And then, no matter what you say, you can kind of try to slow it down however you want and show the offensive line getting blown up on the left side. Josh Allen slipped. He's dropped the ball in Dallas, literally worse than that, picked it up and ran, but he didn't slip in that play. Now, what he did, he slipped. He couldn't have any footing. Josh Allen is not going to lose the game. He slipped, and there was nothing he could have done in that specific play. It was blown up. He had bad footing anyways, though. If it wasn't blown up, he probably still gets it, but I'm still nervous because he slips and all he needs to do is touched and it's down, so it took both things to happen to me. Jeffrey Simmons made a good play. I've talked about it on the pregame. He is a good player, probably their best defensive player, one of the best in the league, untalked about. I don't like anything on that defense, maybe beside him, but Dupree stinks in my opinion. There's not a lot to like on that defense. It's terrible. That's a terrible defense. Good job for them for running, getting some non-holding calls to win. That's what it takes. And that's how they won. But that defense isn't going to take them very far, period. They're going to have more nights like they did against the Bills where they let up 31 points than they are 3-point games, letting up 10-point games, 13-point games. No, that defense is horrible. The Bills will start to convert in the red zone. That's just period. So I like that. I like that decision. Could Josh have checked out of that based on what he saw formation wise? I'm going to have to defer that to bigger X's and O's guys. I like to think he would have and gone right like he has before. But maybe he didn't want to follow a right guard and a rookie right tackle. If that's the case, the Bills need to continue to think about the offensive line because it wasn't good again. Spencer Brown was not good. Cody Ford is now on the bench. Darrell Williams is converted to right guard, which he was bad at when he tried it 2 years ago. There's some stuff to do on the right side of the line. Let's think about that, the right side of the line and second cornerback now going forward over let's continue to invest defense into defensive ends that aren't good enough or at least important enough, in your opinion, to have active every week. You can't take that pick again. I know you have this phenomenon of hey, we're good, our roster's good, but you do have some weaknesses. You did need to take a guard. You did need to take a corner. And instead you have two rookie defensive ends or one rookie defensive end and one second-year guy inactive on game days because you had a run-stop strategy. I'm fine with the run-stop strategy. That's not where my issue is. My issue is, did you really need to load up there, play FAO body? Did he really add more for you? Did Andre Smith really give you that boost on special teams for you? Did Terrell Dodson add that boost on special teams for you? I'm going to go ahead and say no. And that's Kevin's cool take for the week. I'm going to leave you with this note, though, to kind of wrap all this up. The Dolphins on the 31st, the Jags on the 7th, the Jets on the 14th, the Colts at home on the 21st into Thanksgiving. Bills have no reason not to be 8-2. They've dropped their two. Okay, they dropped those games. We saw the run they went on after the Cardinals game last year. And then after that, they have the Saints, Patriots, Bucs. So that's a tough 3-game stretch. That's fine. That'll be some good football in there in late November, early December. But then you get a home Panthers who, coming back down to earth at the Patriots, Falcons, Jets. I've got a max of 4 losses in this schedule, and you got to keep it right at 2, maybe 3 if you think you're going to get the 1 seed, especially losing the tiebreakers now to Pitt and to 10. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to make that run, so that's okay. 10 plays a terrible division 2. They could sneak around. They're going to have the half game on you. That's an issue. And Baltimore's probably going to have tiebreakers over you because you lost to those two teams. You lost to one of their divisional opponents. If they beat them twice, you're in a bind of common opponents, problems, AFC records, that kind of thing. So the Bills aren't going to have very many. I'm a tiebreaker, guys. And the Bills aren't going to have very many tiebreakers in their fashion with, even if they sweep their division, really the best AFC team they're going to beat is, KC. That's it. That's the only AFC team they're going to have the tiebreaker over. So it could help you secure the second seed again this season and have to play a dangerous team like the Browns in the first round, or hopefully it's not the Browns, the Raiders maybe. But none of those teams are going to be fun to play against. So we want to avoid that game. So you can't drop another one, maybe one. So definitely not an AFC game at this point anymore. It can be against, so you only care about common opponents, in the division. But once you go to, obviously your AFC record's more important. So like if you lose, it has to be the Bucs game. It cannot be another AFC game, no matter who it is. Bills need to take care of business. The schedule allows them to. Let's hope for the 2-win season, the 15-2 season, 14-3 at worst. They lose that Bucs game. But guys, just stick with me on the holding call. I'm sorry you can call it on every play. You probably could. There's a lot of plays it could be. You can't allow 3 holdings on one play to create a 76-yard touchdown run. What are we doing? We'll catch you next week on a fresh edition of Kevin's Cool Take, lining up for that Halloween Dolphins game. But look forward to that Bills schedule, and we'll catch you on the other side.